Good morning, good afternoon.
Hi there.
Hey, good morning, everyone. How are we doing?
I'm good. I'm good.
Excellent.
Hi.
So, was everybody able to update to the new Zoom 5? Hope that's a good sign. So I'm just going to test the interpretation right now. Work for Marilyn. And work for Emily. All right, this is great. We've solved it. Thank you so much. Stacy, do you want to just pop into the French channel and just give me a thumbs up if you hear them okay? And Marilyn or Emily, do you want to just share out good morning to good afternoon to Stacy?
I am hearing you in English on the French channel.
Okay. Maybe they are. Oh, Marilyn, I can't hear you yet. I think you need to go to the. Here, I'm just going to end interpretation. Stacy, I think you might have been hearing. Oh, Marilyn, did you want to share? Okay. I think what was happening is because you're a participant, Stacy, you would still be hearing me. But in the interpretation, when I hit start, you would have to go to, you just have to choose the channel. So.
I had chosen French.
Okay. So we can.
I don't hear Marilyn at all.
Marilyn talking. I'm not sure if she's talking to me.
She's not. I don't hear her.
Or I see her talking.
It could be because.
You guys hear me, right?
Oh, we can hear you very faintly. Marilyn, Emily? I don't hear you now.
Michael, as I don't know if it's because I'm a panelist, but I don't have the options anymore for interpretation.
Yeah, I wonder if that's why.
Close them, I think, right?
Yeah. Well, the good thing is the fact it has the flags beside them for panelists mean that they'll be the interpreters. Like that's the sign of success.
This is Emily who would like to hear me, or?
Yeah, I see that. Marilyn, just one moment. Okay, so I'm going to start interpretation. Nope, I can't hear you, Marilyn. I just sent a reminder email to our other panelist, Sylvia.
Emily, so when you go to French, Emily should be speaking. I'm on the French channel. Oh, I'm hearing someone in French. C'est Amélie. I'm hearing Amélie, not Marilyn. Oh, yeah, you sound good. Yeah, you sound very good.
Stacey, are you getting the same volume from both of them? Or I'm wondering if it's maybe the headphones or something.
Hold on, Michael, because I'm in the French channel. Let me go back to English. Repeat what you just said.
Could it be the headphones? Are you getting the same volume from both of them?
I don't hear Marilyn at all. I see her moving her mouth, so I know she's talking, but I'm not hearing her. She wasn't plugged in. But Emily on the French side is perfectly clear.
That can be the other thing.
Yes, absolutely.
There's Tracy. Hi, Tracy. So if everybody can hear me, in the bottom you see the little, when you're, you have mute, stop video, participants, chat. So on your control panel, go to mute and you can select a microphone, built-in microphone, or same as system, speaker, you can select the same. Then if you go down to test speaker and microphone, you can choose that and it gives you a little ringtone and it tests it for you. So it tells me mine's looking good. Then you can go to audio settings and you can see there what you're looking at, if you're looking at headphones or something else, if there's a challenge. Tracy, do you want to unmute and say hello?
Hi.
Awesome. How are you?
I'm okay.
Okay.
I need to figure out how I get my headphones to work. I know you were just talking about that.
Yeah. So go to that little microphone.
Yeah.
At the bottom.
Oh, with the icon. Okay, I got it. Okay, does that work? Can you still hear me?
Yeah, I can still hear you.
Yeah, perfect.
Okay, so I see our two interpreters have both turned off video and turned off the mic, so I'm assuming they're talking to each other on the phone and trying to figure out what's going on. Sylvia, thank you for joining us. If you want to, I can unmute your mic in your video. How you doing, Sylvia? Sylvia? Let there be light. I'm hearing beeping. Somebody's either on the microwave or something exciting's going on.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yay. I just dialed in on my phone because I find that I can hear better and the sound is more reliable.
Okay.
On my beautiful rural internet.
Where are you calling from, Sylvia?
I live in Caledon, the northern part of Caledon, so it's about an hour and 20 minutes outside of Toronto.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, I love it. I'm so excited, guys. I think this content is really cool, and I'm keen to see where
Emily,
the
we can
group
hear
goes
you.
with it. So I'm going to put myself on mute now, okay? But I'll unmute myself when needed.
Yeah, Sylvia, can you turn up your volume at all when you're talking?
I can try. Let me try this right now. I can
So-
also project louder.
Yeah, there's
Is
a
this
little
sounding
mute.
better?
Or yeah, with your little microphone, if you click on your audio settings,
Even if I've dialed in by phone?
I think you can. So you can see there's like, it gives you your,
Computer audio phone call connected. Do you want me to go to computer audio?
no,
Or do you want me
because
to?
you're talking on the phone. Is there like a volume?
It's
a
maxed.
It's max.
On
Okay,
my
great.
phone, it's maxed. I can, you know what I could do? I can take the headset off. Do you want me to try that?
Let's keep with the headset.
Okay.
I think it's fine. Stacy or Tracy, can you give me a thumbs up if you can hear Sylvia okay? I got
There's
a
an
thumbs
up and
down
a
from
down.
Amelie. Okay, so Sylvia, do
Let
you
me
want to try
try.
with
Do you want me to take this off for a second
Yeah,
to
let's
see
try.
if I speak right? If it works? One
Okay.
sec.
Good morning.
Is that better?
Yeah, I'm seeing nods from Amelie, so that's good.
Okay, then that's what I'll do.
Okay. Well, and if you want as well.
Can I try one other thing?
Yeah,
Can
of
I
course.
put it on hands-free from the phone set and see if that sounds better?
Yeah, try that. Stacy, could
Okay,
you go into
one
the
sec.
French channel? Merlin asked if if somebody can go in and hear.
Can you hear me now?
Yep, Sylvia, you're great. Stacy is
Merlin,
going.
je t'entends.
Oh,
Okay, so then I will ditch the headset actually, and just use hands-free, and hopefully you can hear me. But throw stuff in the chat box because I can swap it around if not.
It's fine for me. So I'm just going to go through my screen then. Merlin, are you good now? And you're good for French interpretation? Amélie? C'est bon? I still have her on interpreter, but I'll turn off interpretation for a sec.
Okay, so you guys can hear me now?
Yep, here we go.
Yes, now
Okay.
we
Est-ce que vous
can.
pouvez m'entendre moi aussi? Yay!
Yes. Good, great. So for Sylvia, maybe we could perhaps try, because the audio quality is better with the headset. It's just that the sound was very faint. And I didn't quite see, but could you try having the microphone closer to your mouth? Perhaps that would help. Or it could be, from dialing via phone versus on the computer. If you're comfortable at all trying to have the audio from your computer, that's something else we could try.
So I'm going to try. There's a volume switch now. So let me try and make sure that it's at the max.
Is it?
Okay.
How's that sound quality?
The volume is low.
And that's with the headset. The challenge
Yeah.
for me
Hmm.
is if I go with the computer audio as opposed to the phone audio, if there's any lag in my internet, suddenly my voice will start to stretch out.
That's true.
And my experience is that that doesn't, like if I can phone in, even if my video goes off, even if everything goes wonky, you won't lose me.
Do you by any chance have an Ethernet cable so that way you could connect to internet via cable?
It is already that way.
Okay.
I live in a rural community where I pay the same as the people 10 minutes up the road who get 75 to 100 megabits per second. And in my speed test, I don't get above 1.5.
Ooh, wow.
So
Okay. I see.
that's the dilemma I'm struggling with.
Yes, I understand. So
Do you want me to get rid of this and just do the phone headset, like the phone headset?
let's try it again just to compare.
Is that better?
I think so. Myrlène, what do you think?
Could you continue speaking, please, for just a moment?
Sure. And I'll think about projecting my voice, but you can hear me, or alternatively, I can do this.
Oh, that's much better.
Is that clearer?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, then that's
it's
what I'll do. I'll hold it.
Yeah, sorry, it's not
option.
the most comfortable posture to be in,
That's
but
fine.
it's much
fine.
better.
Yeah, I just want people to be able to hear.
Right. Well, the thing with us interpreters is that we have to hear the person who's speaking, and we speak ourselves. So obviously,
So it has to be loud enough to hear over yourself speaking.
That's the thing. We
Got
need
it.
a bit more volume than just somebody who is listening, because we hear our own voices on top of the presenters.
Right.
But that should work all right. If you have your phone microphone as close to possible to your mouth, that's good.
I'm good to go.
Very good. Thank you so much.
Okay, no worries. And just zap me a chat if you're having trouble at all. I may have to put the headset down to type, but we'll deal with that.
If it's for a few seconds, maybe you can use the speakerphone and then get back.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Perfect.
You get the gist.
I do, but I'm going to mute me now, as long as you can hear me.
Very good.
Excellent. So
do you guys need any other testing or anything else from us interpreters?
I think we're all good to go. So what I'm going to do then is I'll start the webinar in a few minutes. I'll turn on interpretation. We'll get everybody coming in and picking their channel. We'll hang tight for a couple minutes, do the introduction, and go from there.
Okay, good.
All right.
Perfect. C'est drôle parce que moi aussi, je t'appelais. Attends un instant.
All right, I'm going to start the interpretation and then start the broadcast. So good luck, everybody. Looking forward to today. Thanks again for all of your help. So I think Emily needs to choose if she's the interpreter. I've given it to Marlene. Yeah, Emily's good. All right, we're going into broadcast mode. So we will now be live, and we're waiting for everyone to come and join us. Good morning to the attendees joining us today. Please welcome. Thanks Thanks for joining us. If you'd like, as you're getting settled, if you'd like to give us a hello in the chat box, just let us know if you can hear me okay, where you're calling in from today. Maybe say hello and give us a name of an organization, a location, some sort of engagement in the chat. We'll be following along. So welcome everyone. As I said, please come in, give us a hello and where you're from. You'll see we'll be doing a couple of different things today. We'll be doing a question and answer, which you can participate in by clicking the Q&A bubble box on your Zoom bar. We'll also be asking some questions in a program called Mentimeter, which I'll be sharing in just a moment. And as well, you can send us the presenters or other participants messages via the chat box. So some of you are already streaming in and saying hello. We appreciate that. Welcome from across Canada, where you are. Good morning to some, good afternoon to some. So before we go any further, I wanted to inform you that we have French language translation available for today's webinar. So I would ask if presenters, myself included, we speak a little bit slower to allow the interpreters to respond. If you are interested in using the interpretation feature, you will have been prompted to choose a language. You can be in the English channel or the French channel. So my name is Michael Jansen. I'm the Director of Communications for the Canadian Mentoring Partnership, and I'll be acting as the host for today's webinar. I'm excited for that many of you I see in the chat here, I recognize the names, you're back here to join us. In lieu of the first Canadian Mentoring Symposium 2020 in Ottawa, we're hosting a series of webinars, which would have been the key feature conversations of that event. So it's an opportunity for us to share together and explore and deep dive into important topics about building a mentoring movement in Canada. First of all, we'd like to start with a land acknowledgement. We begin today by acknowledging that we are meeting on Indigenous land. As settlers, we're grateful for the opportunity to meet here, and we thank all the generations of Indigenous peoples who have taken care of this land. As settlers, this recognition of the contributions and historic importance of Indigenous peoples must also be clearly and overtly connected to our collective commitment to make to the promise and the challenge of truth and reconciliation and making it real in our communities. So to tell you a little bit more about the Canadian Mentoring Partnership, I'd like to first of all welcome you to be here in whatever space you are joining us. I think we're in week 8 now of the pandemic. Many of us are working with little humans at home. Many of us are worried about loved ones or safe places in our community. We know that you have a lot going on, and we wanted to thank you for joining us today in whatever space you come to us. And thank you for your patience in this process. Thank you for engaging with us. And by all means, if you need to step in, step out, step back, feel free to reach out to us and connect to us after the fact and continue these important conversations in another form. So you can reach us via mentoringcanada.ca. So as Stacey Dakin, our managing director, said in our first webinar, part of participating in the developmental evaluation process means taking the time to convene together, to listen, to work, to explore. We are convening a dialogue and a national conversation with our peers across Canada, and we know that new answers and new approaches will emerge from these research-informed conversation. So a bit about the Canadian Mentoring Partnership. We operate in 4 primary buckets: research, technology, partnerships, and communications. Our mission is we are committed to expanding access to mentoring to help every young person fulfill their potential. We define mentoring very broadly: the presence of a caring individual or individuals who provide support, friendship, reinforcement, and constructive role modeling over time. We invite you to continue the conversation with us in other spaces. If you're on social media and you're sharing any learnings from the conversation today, we ask that you use the hashtag Power of Mentoring or pouvoir de mentorat. You can find us on all of the social media at the handles listed here. Search for Mentoring Canada on Instagram, on Twitter. If you're not already subscribed to our newsletter, please visit mentoringcanada.ca, and at the very bottom of the page, you can enter your name and email. That's the best way to get informed about new events, new opportunities, new resources or materials, new training, anything we're doing going forward. Our newsletter's been coming out on a weekly basis. And as always, we welcome you to share with us important stories about how you're keeping mentoring going and how you're continuing to support mentoring during these physically distant, but not socially distant times. The next webinar we'll be hosting is on May 20th at 1 p.m. This is the communications pillar webinar. We'll be talking about how we address the shortage of volunteer mentors across Canada. The CMP is undertaking a market research study to identify and determine who are the Canadians most likely to volunteer, what messages resonate with them, what are their limits or barriers or fears, and what would it take to convince more Canadian adults to step up as mentors in formal or informal mentoring initiatives. So you can join us in this meeting, share your experiences. We'd love to hear and have your input into the key questions of this study. It's a powerful opportunity to think together about how we can grow the number of potential new mentors in Canada. So if you have board members on your team, recruiters, marketing staff, just anybody who's responsible for getting out there and putting up the posters to recruit new mentors, they are invited to join us for this call. So next, our main event today, on with the show, national collaboration. So our webinar goals today are that we want to deepen our understanding, deepen our shared understanding of the collective impact framework. We want to highlight relevant learning from successful collective impact initiatives. We want to apply knowledge and insights of the collective impact framework to the design of the CMP's national collaborative. We want to generate participant input and feedback regarding the goals of a national mentoring movement in Canada, a potential theory of change for the Canadian mentoring movement, and discuss who we have engaged and who else to engage to support Canada's mentoring movement. So following the welcome, we'll be learning a bit more together and deepening our shared understanding of collective impact. We'll be reflecting on CMP's common agenda and impact. We'll be refining a collaborative infrastructure for a national mentoring movement and discussing a little bit about what's next. So I'm excited today to share the 3 hosts who will be taking you on this journey. Stacey Dakin, the Managing Director of the Canadian Mentoring Partnership. Sylvia Chu, the Consulting Director of Collective Impact with the Tamarack Institute. And Tracy Luca-Huger, Director of the Partnership Network with the Canadian Mentoring Partnership. And let's get on with the show. So Sylvia, you're unmuted. Can you share?
Yes. Can everybody hear me? Beautiful. So thank you for the beautiful introduction, Michael. I want to dive us right in to kind of doing a review of collective impact, which for those of you who don't know, is a very disciplined form of multi-sector collaboration. And I know the first question I want to ask for the folks on the line is we have a poll about the level of knowledge that you currently have about collective impact, because that will really help me know kind of when to dive deep. So if we can bring up our first poll, you have 3 options. The first is, I know very little about collective impact. I have maybe heard the term, and that's sort of where my knowledge base of collective impact is. Second option is I'm familiar with the theory. Like I've read about it, I've talked to people about it, I have a pretty good theoretical sense of what collective impact is. And your third option is collective impact. I have been living and breathing this stuff for a while. I'm actually actively implementing a collective impact initiative right now. So if you all can take a moment, is there anything folks need to know, Michael, about how to get into the poll?
Yeah, absolutely. So I invite you in either on your phone or in a new browser window to go to menti.com, that's MENTI.com, and use the code 453621 to use, it's this program called Mentimeter that allows us to do live polling. So you go to menti.com and use the code 453621 and you can vote. And as the participants vote, the results come up here live for all of us. So we'll give a few minutes for everybody to get started there. We'll be doing 6 questions today via Mentimeter. So I encourage you to keep your either your phone or keep another web browser close at hand so you can view the share.
Someone's asking for the number again. So the number is 453621. It's at the top of the screen there. It's nice to see our numbers growing. This is lovely.
Yes, we'll be doing more Mentimeter polling throughout the event. The benefit is it's more interactive. It allows us more options. The polling inside of the Zoom platform only gives us kind of yes or no questions, which isn't as engaging. So maybe we'll give 10 more seconds here. And then we'll close the vote. And then we'll let Sylvia continue with the presentation.
Okay, is that our time, Michael, or you want to give people a few more minutes?
Yeah, I think this is about it. So you've got kind of a split.
Really, really helpful for me. Now I see that 14% of you are folks that actually are familiar with this beyond theory and are actively working to implement a collective impact project. And so I would encourage you throughout this in the chat boxes and with your insights and questions to share what you know. But for those of you who don't know, collective impact really came to the fore in 2011 when 2 consultants from a consulting firm called FSG, Social Impact Consultants, published a paper in the Stanford Social Innovation Review outlining the 5 conditions and 3 preconditions of collective impact. And what I find fascinating about it, the definition is really clear. The definition is a disciplined cross-sector approach to solving complex social or environmental issues at a large scale. But how the consultants at FSG actually developed this framework is an interesting backstory, because what they did was they developed it out of a consulting assignment with a philanthropy network. And the research question that they as consultants were hired to help the philanthropy network answer was, we have been investing for more than 10 years individually and collectively, and we want to know what impact we have created through our work. And so in all the interviews that the folks at FSG did, what they discovered was that the vast majority of groups that they spoke to that had been grantees of this network of philanthropists, 80% of the time, the programs made a very important difference in the lives of individuals. But often, too often, that impact was limited to an actual small number of people who were fortunate enough to be enrolled in the program or the service that was funded. However, as they were doing their interviews, the folks at FSG also kind of found a smaller handful of what they initially kind of categorized as outlier projects. And what made these outliers unique was that they had been able to transcend that limited impact on a small number of people and actually were the catalyst for a much broader, much more sustained, high impact change on a key issue. So the 3 preconditions and 5 conditions of collective impact are the patterns that the folks at FSG identified as how those outlier projects that had generated high impact were working differently than typical programs and services. Okay? And that's sort of an important background as you think about what this is. So collective impact is a partnership between many diverse players from different sectors, and assessing the readiness for collective impact really looks at, do you have the right mix of influential champions at the table? These are folks who are individually ready to put skin in the game because they think that the issue that's bringing you all together is a critically important one. They are often, but not always, organizational leaders as well, so that they bring not just their own individual passion and commitment to the work, but also the resources of their networks and or their organizations in support of working together. Urgency of the issue is the second kind of assessment that you want to be thinking about. And what that is saying is, just because we live and breathe this notion of the importance of mentoring, that does not mean that it's on the radar of most folks across the country. And so it's a critical assessment of how urgent and important is our issue to the average person, and what, if anything, do we need to do to tell the story of mentoring in such a way that it lights a spark for people and they also see that it is an issue of growing urgency and importance. And the last of the 3 preconditions really speaks to, do you have adequate resources to fund the collaborative work that you are hoping to do together? Because there, most of the organizations are all, and citizen groups or participant groups that you engage, many of them are busy doing their own work. And so if you want a collaboration to thrive, you have to be willing to invest in infrastructure to really support that moving forward. The adequate resources are funding for sure, but also they're in kind. And I think that this is really important, because one of the key ingredients of success in a collective impact effort is that it really is something that everyone feels that they have some ownership around and that they are co-creating together. And so every time a partner contributes some in-kind contribution, that's part of how they are contributing to the resources of the collective work, but also how they are making a statement of ownership and endorsement of that work. Okay, so helpful to think not just in terms of dollars, but also in kind. If we can go to the next slide. So here are the 5 conditions of collective impact. These are the 5 things that, as you remember, Kenya and Kramer, who are the authors from FSG, saw that these outlier projects were doing differently than traditional program delivery kind of initiatives. The first was they have a common agenda. So they have brought partners together from different sectors, and the common agenda has 2 parts to it. The common agenda obviously is a shared vision or aspiration for what the partners are hoping to achieve together, but as importantly, it's a statement from those partners that they all recognize that no one sector or no one partner working alone is going to be able to realize that vision, and therefore they are committing to this collaborative approach. And it includes some of their thinking about what the joint approach is that they are going to embrace to move toward the vision that they share. So that's the common agenda. Shared measurement is the second of the 5 conditions of collective impact. And frankly, for me, this is one of the things that differentiates collective impact from other forms of collaboration that I've seen. What shared measurement speaks to is, once you have a common agenda, what are the measures that we as a group of partners are going to monitor so that we know that the work that we are doing together is making a difference? How will we know? And how will we hold ourselves accountable? So the measures have to be linked to the common agenda, okay? However, I will say one of the other areas where shared measurement can be really useful is in actually crafting your common agenda. Because if you look at data and around a particular issue, it can help inform and make a case for, your approach and your plan. Let me give you an example. So when the Hamilton Roundtable on Poverty Reduction was just launching its work, one of the first things they did was hold a series of focus groups in the community where they wanted to have a conversation about the impact of poverty in people's lives. But surprisingly, people didn't want to come and give up an evening to talk about something as depressing as poverty. They frankly just wanted to kind of not deal with it, which was a bit of a surprise and a shock to the leaders of this early movement around poverty reduction. Not daunted though, what they did was they went back and looked at data. And one of the things that the data showed them was that 75% of the people living in poverty in the city at the time were children. Armed with that data, they then reframed the challenge. And they actually started having conversations in the community about how to make their community the best place to raise a child, knowing darn well that if 75% of the children in the community were living in poverty, if you're making the world better for all children in the city, you are de facto addressing issues of poverty. And then really focus their energy and attention on building awareness around bringing the lens of poverty to the work of everyone. So there's one very tangible example of the importance of shared measurement. Mutually reinforcing activities is the third of the 5 conditions. What it actually is saying to the different partners who engage, this is not about creating a net new organization. What this is creating a new format and platform for existing organizations to work together differently. And so one of the first things that becomes very important, if you think about it and you put your organizational hat on, 90% of the time we have our head down delivering our strategic plan, delivering our programs and services that we've been funded to deliver. Every once in a while, as we're heading home from work, we think we've got great people and they're doing great work. They can't work harder, they can't work faster, and yet we know that we could be doing more and having greater impact if if we could do other things. So the Collective Impact Initiative gives you that opportunity to bring different players together and map out what you do have. How do you strengthen and build from the strengths of what exists right now? And then where are the gaps and other opportunities to grow and strengthen the work that individually you're doing so that you're actually creating a much more enabled and supportive ecosystem for the work that you're doing together to thrive. That's what this is really about. Continuous communication is the fourth of the 5, and it kind of has a couple of important dimensions for me. The first is when you bring people from diverse sectors together, they come from different paradigms and they have different language to talk about the same thing. I remember very painfully hosting the first ever local food summit in the rural area where I live. And I'm about 3 weeks away to bringing together 140 people. I've been always clear in my own head that local food is 100 kilometers within the vicinity of where I live. And I'm talking to a colleague I'm trying to convince to come to our event. And he tells me that Maple Leaf Foods, where he works, just had a strategic planning session and confirmed local food was their strategic priority as well, only to discover that for them, the definition of local food was anywhere in Canada. Ouch. So continuous communication on the first level is slowing down the partners well enough to understand each other's jargon so that we can create a common shared language to talk about the work we're doing together. The second layer of continuous communication is being aware that we have delegates at our table who are part of much larger networks than ourselves. And so how are we supporting one another to take what we are learning through our collective work and bring it back and infusing it into the networks and organizations that these folks are already part of? So that we're not just bringing individuals along, but we're bringing sectors and networks along as well. And then finally, what's the story we need to be telling everyone as our work begins to unfold about what we're accomplishing and what we're learning as we're working together in this new way, and where the opportunities are and the value is to strengthen mentoring, okay? And then the last of the conditions, backbone support, really acknowledges what I said earlier. It's saying, A, we're not creating a net new organization, but we do have to be intentional about investing in infrastructure to enable partners to work well together if we want this work that we're doing together to get traction and move into action. Okay? So that's the 5 conditions and the 3 preconditions. If we can go to the next slide. This is that definition that we've already covered. So disciplined cross-sector approach. And it is particularly an approach that works particularly well when the issue that you're working on is complex and dynamic. And I think what you all are trying to do in building a national mentoring partnership is exactly fits that definition of complexity. So just a brief recap, collective impact isn't about something being driven by a single organization or sector. It is not solely focused on programs, and it may sort of champion some early wins, but its primary focus is not on short-term priorities. And it's not necessary if what you're trying to do is resolve a simple or a complicated problem. However, what you need to remember is it does require an intentional investment in that infrastructure to help the coordination that you're trying to do together to thrive. It does require a diversity of perspectives. Data can be incredibly important both to inform the issue and also to reinforce our learning as we experiment together around what outcomes we're trying to create. Optimally, collective impact is a really great framework to look beyond programs and say what are the system barriers and or policy change opportunities that we can champion together that will create a more supportive environment for the work we're trying to advance. It does really intentionally look at how we build from strength, and it really does, you know, it has hopefully an aspirational kind of vision we're driving for, balanced with a really strategic, okay, so then what are the chunks that we're going to work on to help drive toward that vision? All right, if we can go on to the next slide. So it's interesting, but about 4 or 5 years into collective impact as a framework, kind of going viral and different groups experimenting with it, one of the co-authors of the paper, the original paper on collective impact, John Kania, came to a learning event that Tamarack hosted, and one of the things that he said really struck me. He said, as I'm watching people take this framework and work with it, I'm beginning to realize that the 3 preconditions and 5 conditions are important but not sufficient to get to the full promise of what this framework can offer. And he started to highlight some of the mindset shifts implicit in this framework, and he felt that they were critical enough that we need to start making them explicit. So I want to just recap some of these quickly for you. So these are sort of like the intentions that we can bake into this kind of approach. One of the first is, yes, do we ever need content experts at our table working together to ask ourselves tough questions about what's next and how do we strengthen what we know to be important in our work? But equally important is to ensure that we bring the voice of what we often refer to as the context experts. So these are the people with lived experience in various communities who can really help balance the perspective of the subject matter experts, because both types of wisdom are needed to build a robust plan. It's one of the reasons why, you know, you can see a brilliant initiative that maybe has been piloted in Hawaii, but if we choose to bring it to Ontario or to Alberta, or, you know, to Calgary or to rural Ontario, we have to adapt and tweak that initiative because no 2 contexts are the same. So the marriage of content and context becomes really important. And so think about that as you think about who's at your table. Okay, on to the next one. This one for me was profound. We keep investing in programs and getting pissed off that the system doesn't change. But that's actually not fair, because that's not what programs are intended to do. So do we need high quality programs as part of the work that we're doing? Absolutely. But at the same time, we need to be very intentional at looking at what are the systemic barriers that are preventing our work from thriving the way we would like it to be, and what strategies do we want to put in place together to address not just the programmatic stuff, but also be thinking about how we shift and change some of those system barriers and or policy opportunities. If you can go to the next slide. For me, this is probably the best definition to help distinguish and see how programmatic and systemic change kind of fits together. And it comes from the work of the Forum for Youth Investment, Karen Pittman, who says programmatic interventions will help someone beat the odds, but a systemic intervention seeks to change the odds for everyone. And we need both. But optimally, collective impact initiatives are really good or better suited for thinking through and implementing systemic change strategies. We can go to the next slide. The folks at FSG, who are the authors of the Collective Impact Framework, partnered with Peter Senge and have done a really good job about really unpacking what do we mean when we think about system change and what's the work involved. And part of what he talks about is, you know, at the very top of the pyramid here, you know, you can see explicit structural changes. So you'll see changes in policy. You might see changes in practice. You might see changes in how resources flow. The less obvious stuff, but equally important around systems change, is because you've brought various partners together from different perspectives and they're learning from one another. It's the relationships and connections that get built, and the shifts in understanding and the shifts potential in how power is shared that are equally valuable. And then at the end of the day, it's really about how do we change our own mental models. You know, if you think about how people react to smoking today relative to how they did in the 1960s, you'll see how the mental models around smoking have been absolutely flipped on their head. And that's the kind of transformational change that optimally we're driving for. But we also, you know, will see it and can help stimulate it by focusing on those explicit, obvious pieces at the top. If we can go to the next slide. So one of the best definitions I think I ever heard of collective impact was someone who said, you know, we think of our collective impact initiative as our co-created innovation space. It's our chance to get out of the day-to-day stuff of the work that we're doing and have some focused time and energy put into what else and what more we might want to think about. And so for us at Tamarack, community innovation is a form of social innovation that's very much rooted in place. And it's as much a journey as it is an end product. And I love the quote on the sidebar there from Ella Bansky, who reminds us that every human being has baked into our DNA ingenuity and creativity. So it's not a forum that is only for an elite few, but in fact, we all have this deep within us. And so what the Collective Impact Initiative is creating that opportunity, I think, for us all to be able to leverage with intentionality the kind of innovation that we know needs to happen. If we can go to the next slide. Can you all hear me? Because I just lost my visual connection. But I'm hoping you can hear me.
We can hear you.
Hello? Good. Yay. I will just keep plowing along then, if you don't mind. For me, the innovation piece is really key.
Hey, it's Michael here. I'm just unmuting Sylvia. Hey, Sylvia.
All hear me?
Yep, there we go.
Good, thank you. So one of the big important lessons is rarely, if ever, when we've seen a successful social innovation, can we credit one individual. And in fact, research has shown that it's a partnership often between three innovators that is the magic that allows big change, innovative change to happen. Typically, those three innovators are A, the disruptive innovator, who is also often thought of as the passionate amateur. They're the ones that are motivated by love. They're the ones who have had a mentor in their life and know that it is the thing that made the difference for them. And so this is like a calling for them. They are passionate. But the reality is they are often not plugged into the more formal system. And so it's easy to dismiss them because they're calling for things that require change, and change is hard. However, if that disruptor can link up with the second kind of innovator, the bridging innovator, who is an intermediary, can be a funder, can be like a social planning council, can be some other network that validates the passionate amateur's truth, challenges the passionate amateur to think beyond their individual story and how they can make it a bigger, more universal story, but also opens doors and legitimizes the message of that disruptor to a broader network within the system. That's the role of the bridger. So those two together now start to become way more powerful in terms of advancing the change they want to have happen. But what the magic, the final partner, is the other piece of the magic, and that is the receptive innovator. I think of the receptive innovator as the closet rebel within the organization who is desperately hungry to see action and change happen. And they buddy up, and the receptive innovator does two things, really. One, he coaches on the sidelines the other two innovators, telling them sort of when's a good time to bring in their good idea, who in particular in the organization they've already convinced, who remains a skeptic, that kind of thing. And also internally raises questions that create readiness within the organization to hear the message that the other innovators are bringing. So, you know, I've been hearing a lot about mentoring. Does our organization have a policy that promotes mentoring or allows our staff to do mentoring as part of our social commitment to social responsibility, that kind of thing? So thinking about that, I think, is important for the kind of change that you're wanting to advance. How do you pull these folks together? Lastly, if we can go to the next slide, I think the thing that's really interesting for me is to really think about what this looks like in action. So one thing is understanding theory and seeing how it works. What I want to do to sort of wrap up this part of my presentation is to share with you at a high level the story of Tamarak's Vibrant Communities, Cities Reducing Poverty Network, because it too is a national collective impact initiative where Tamarak has historically played the backbone role. So if we can go to the next slide, I'm just going to sort of show you, this is an initiative that began in 2002. And the first iteration ran for 8 years, from 2002 to 2010. It started with 5 cities. That's it. And each of the 5 cities was asked to form a multi-sector collaborative table of diverse leaders and come up with a local plan for their city to reduce poverty. That network was connected through Tamarak, acting as a bit of a backbone. We provided consulting support and advice to each of the local communities together, but also intentionally brought them together virtually and in person to learn from each other. Ultimately, over time, the first 5 cities grew until there were 13 cities in the network, and we had the wonderful support and resourcing of the McConnell Family Foundation to help support these pilot communities as they developed their approaches, place-based approaches to reducing poverty. At the end of that first 8 years, with that network of 13 cities, what we saw and tracked was real difference in households and individuals who are living in poverty, seeing them have, so 202,000 households received some poverty reducing benefit as a result of the collective work of these 13 communities. There were a total of 164 poverty reducing initiatives completed or in progress across the 13 cities. 22.8 million had been invested in local communities, and there were 53 substantive government policy changes. So we were able to show that we could make a difference. If you can go to the next slide. At the end of 2010, there was a bit of kind of a pause, reflection, and ultimately there was a decision made that yes, this work had some legs to it. And so there was then an intentional effort to scale beyond the 13 communities and start welcoming in communities from across Canada who wanted to learn and replicate the approaches that we had sort of refined in partnership with the first 13. As a result of that work, and because now these local communities weren't acting in isolation, but could also speak as a collective, they were really instrumental in being a catalyst for 12 provinces and territories to make a policy shift and a provincial-wide commitment to support poverty reduction efforts in their respective provinces. And so the strong local efforts, though, continued and remained. So just you can see below 3 examples of how the local work continues, but the power of linking these local efforts together into a cohesive network was also instrumental in telling a bigger story and advancing significant investment at the provincial level as well. If you can go to the next slide. So in the continued work, you know, the commitment from that national network now is working in partnership and has been instrumental in working federally to develop Canada's first ever national poverty reduction strategy that has 3 pillars. And the members of the Vibrant Communities Network have been instrumental in both giving input to and also working alongside government to shape what this national poverty reduction strategy looks like. If we can go to the next slide. So what we know, there was no, for the local projects that around poverty reduction, there was no recipe and prescription about what, if you imagine, you know, we didn't say, well, you have to address poverty only by addressing it through employment strategies or through affordable housing strategies or whatever. We did not prescribe that at all. Though what we were very prescriptive about was the way of working. So very much like a collective impact project, we said to the local groups, you need to figure out what resonates for your community in terms of the entry point for how you want to tackle poverty, whether it's through employment or through affordable housing or whatever. But what we do want to do is make sure that you are bringing the diverse sectors together and embracing a collective approach, that you have a commitment to ongoing learning and change, and that there's an emphasis on building and or strengthening the assets and connections that already exist in community. If you can go to the next slide. So the how the communities were working, we were prescriptive about. The where they put the focus was completely up to them and could be adapted to the local context. What we know looking back over this journey is that there are some key elements of success. So having credible conveners locally is important. Having that cross-sector leadership table both at the local level and also nationally is also important. Really looking at how you frame your issue and framing it in terms of a challenging community aspiration is important. Being able to have and articulate a clear shared plan of action. And this example from Living St. John is a beautiful one around how on one page they have communicated the work that they intend to do around reducing poverty. And that the commitment to engage the voices of people living the experience of poverty in the leadership and the shaping of the plan has been instrumental. And informed by research is another key element of success. If we can go to the next slide. So, lessons to share as you think about building a Canadian mentoring movement. You need both that worm's eye local view about what's going to fly, and at the same time have a bird's eye view across each one of those local projects and how you can link them for a bigger narrative. You need to be willing to step into the work, learn yourselves, but also learn from each other, adapt and adapt to whatever is going on at the local context. Don't wait for the perfect plan. You'll never get there, but rather get a roughly right plan, get your partners in alignment, and then start doing and learning from that doing. Really think about the importance of building connection between the local experiments and also, what's happening at the local level and how does it connect to a provincial level and or how does it connect to a federal level. Be persistent, have clear expectations, but really a willingness to embrace a long-term view. This is not quick work. 3 to 5 years is the very minimum that we've seen for this kind of long-term collective impact work to really thrive. If you can go to the next slide. So I just want to wrap this piece up to really kind of frame out the usefulness of thinking about, because it's great big scale work, how do you eat an elephant, right? One bite at a time. One of the ways to kind of identify big bites is to think in terms of critical shift. So the recipe in some ways is for impact, a formula for impact is really growing community awareness, will and action, together with efforts to shift system and policy, and then aligning program and project interventions over time and with greater scale. Ultimately, we hope will lead to the kind of impact that I think you're looking for. And before I sort of wrap up, I just wanted to sort of capture for you, so what the heck is a critical shift? For me, a critical shift is thinking in terms of what are some key priority areas where we can focus attention and where we want to design new solutions. A good critical shift really, it has a succinct statement about this is the part of the system that we're hoping to change, and this is the ideal kind of change that we're striving to create together. Useful when you're thinking about critical shifts to think in terms of 2 dimensions. What are the system shifts that we think need to happen to create a more enabling environment for mentoring to thrive? It's one area of shift. And the second area of shift that you might want to think about is what's the human experience change or shift that if we were able to figure out how to make it happen would really enable the work we're trying to do to be easier and or more robust. Okay, I hope that's helpful in terms of thinking about critical shifts, and I'm happy now to turn it over to you, Tracy, because I think this is where you pick this up and we talk about how you've taken this theory and really put wheels on it.
Great. Thank you so much, Sylvia. That theoretical background is so critical for us to understand what we are trying to achieve with the Canadian Mentoring Partnership and how we are framing the work collectively as we move forward. And so as a collective impact initiative, the Canadian Mentoring Partnership has identified 3 key priorities: setting the bar for quality mentoring, strengthening the mentoring field in Canada, and building cross-sector support for mentoring in Canada. These are very important strategies and priorities for us and have shaped the work for us over the past 9 months and will continue to shape the work for us over the next 1.5 years. When we're building a national mentoring movement, we have identified under setting the bar for quality mentoring that we want to establish Canadian elements of effective practice. We want to build evidence-based tools and resources, engage in communities of practice. We want to facilitate and convene and steward knowledge transfer. And what that really means is not only from research to practitioners, not only from us as a Canadian Mentoring Partnership to local service providers, but to share amongst context experts the facilitation and stewardship of knowledge transfer, of context adaptability, and the applicability of mentoring across our country. And what does that mean for young people? We want to engage in professional development opportunities and enhance those for service providers and for our stakeholders. The CMP wants to look at our role as a backbone to support organizations and service providers and programs. When we're building cross-sector support in Canada, we have identified that we'd like to embark collectively on campaigns and awareness to raise the profile of mentoring in Canada and to absolutely provide more opportunities for young people to engage in mentoring. And so we've identified these areas, but what we really would like to do right now is have you as our participants and as the context experts provide us with some more insight. It's very important for us to look at system shifts and to further identify where our work should be focused and how we can best strengthen the sector. So Michael, I know we have some other polls that we would like to engage our participants in at this time.
Yeah, just 1 minute here. So our next poll that we're going to be doing, the same thing, you go to menti.com, menti.com on your phone or in your browser, and you type in the code 453621, and we would like to ask you this question, Tracy.
So the question is, what are the important shifts needed to set the bar for quality mentoring? So at CMP, we have identified elements of effective practice, looking at evidence-based tools and resources, establishing communities of practice. What are we missing in order to achieve outcomes and important system shifts and community shifts in setting the bar for quality mentoring?
So go to menti.com and use the code 453621 and share your responses. So at the top of the screen here, you see 453621. That's the number you want to enter.
We're getting some great responses in. Our goal for the CMP team and for the CMP initiative is that we are wanting this feedback. We will collect this, your input and this feedback and build it into our work and ensure that we are headed in the right direction in order to collectively change the landscape and build a mentoring movement in Canada. It's excellent. Critical mentoring we're seeing, safety and privacy, quality coaching for mentors, workplace mentorship. Inclusiveness, paying attention to strong volunteer management practices. Identify key differences between smaller and larger communities. Yeah, absolutely. This is about the adaptability and about ensuring that context is at the forefront and that communities are able to adapt mentoring and meaningful mentoring experiences for their community context completely. Coaching and training, racialized communities, equal opportunities, inclusiveness. Excellent. These are wonderful. Thank you. EDI, absolutely. Community development, male mentors.
So Tracy, do you want to give it just a few more seconds?
Absolutely. Just a few more seconds and then we'll move. Yeah, strong relationships with local partners and politicians. It's about the systems change as well. I think that's very, very important, and policy change. Thank you, everyone. So we're going to move to our second poll, which is connected to our second priority around strengthening the mentoring field in Canada. So the next question is, what are the important shifts needed to strengthen the mentoring field in Canada?
So same thing for participants, just go to menti.com and use the code 453621. Oh. Sorry, I'll go back to that.
I know you're working hard, Michael, to try and get us those results that we can see.
Yeah.
More engagement from politicians.
Here, sorry, I'll skip back to
relationship of mentoring. That's okay. I can read
knowing. So here we go. Here was the responses. Knowing reality.
Engagement from politicians. Reciprocal relationship of mentoring that both benefit from the connection, absolutely, and enrich the relationship, right? Equalize the power dynamic. Strong understanding of the outcomes of mentoring. Partnering with community stakeholders, raise the profile, importance of mentoring, absolutely. Recognizing the vast differences coast to coast and addressing local needs. And that absolutely makes sense to me and to our initiative, that we're building a national strategy, but it absolutely, whatever gets built needs to relate to context and the experts on the ground and individual communities. We know there's there's a lot of diversity across this country in scale and scope, and looking at the demographic of who the mentees and the mentors are and your local community needs and infrastructure. Well-known spokesperson for the mentoring movement. Yes, we need more ambassadors. We need more champions. Accessibility of recruitment. Yes, mentor recruitment is critical in raising that profile and strengthening our field. Yes. Again, campaigns that relate to the local level. Anti-oppression commitments and training and practice. Evidence of the impact and the importance and critical opportunities that mentoring provides young people in building their future. Mm-hmm. Common practices. Yes, that's part of also, right? Mentor organizations join collective groups locally, provincially, and nationally, building out networks where mentoring is at the forefront and on the table as the agenda and the priority. Nourish relationships for people. I'm wondering, there was a comment there about PDU. Can we just go back to that? Make it a PDU for professions. maybe, I don't know who provided that, but maybe in the chat, if you can just provide a little bit more context on PDU, that would be fabulous. Removing stigma. Yeah, again, male mentors. And we know that our next webinar is also going to focus in on mentor recruitment, which is important, shared outcomes and benefits.
So that's the list we have, Tracy.
It's perfect. Thank you so much. And we have one more poll because we want to also ask you about our third priority around what important and necessary shifts need to occur to build sector support for mentoring in Canada.
And June put in the chat, PDU is Professional Development Unit.
Perfect. Thank you so much, June.
So once again, it's if you go to menti.com and use 453621, it's the same code, you can respond. If for some reason you're having problems with Mentimeter, if you're not able to participate, could you put that in the chat box? It's our first time using this software, and we'd be curious to know how accessible it is. I've tried it on my iPhone, but if somebody has an Android or a different device, we would just be curious to hear, because there's lots of capacity for us to engage with you for future and do some really neat initiatives on it, but only if it works for the audience. So we're waiting for a couple of responses to come in.
Youth-centered approach to include youth voice in this core to our work. Engagement from the local levels of government. Need funding, yes. Calls to action, top of mind, yes. We continue to build out this work, yes. EDI. Shared resources, availability at the local, and regionally. Partnerships with politicians. We'll give it a couple more seconds, Michael, and then we'll move along.
I think one of the things that's looks interesting to me, Tracy, is we've heard a shared recognition in the responses from all orders of government. We see local cited as well as provincial and federal.
Mm-hmm. And as we raise the profile of mentoring in this country, all three are absolutely critical as we embark on this work. It's also very critical as we move forward to pay attention to local, regional, contextual needs, as well as a pan-Canadian need as well. And so our work collectively not only needs to pay attention to our context local experts, but to broaden that voice nationally and on a wide scope as well. And so it needs to reach far and wide and deep. Thank you, everyone. I think we'll close off the poll right now, Michael, because I am conscious of time and we have a lot more that we want to move into. So thank you, everyone, that your input, your expertise, and your insight continues to guide and will continue to guide our work. And helps us to inform as we build out strategies and working groups moving forward. I know that we're going to ask for any other questions, so we're happy to ask you right now to fill in the chat box any aha moments in looking at our strategy and our priorities. Any other questions at this point from Sylvia's presentation in the theory? And if not, Sylvia, I'm going to hand it back to you to carry us forward through the presentation.
Thank you very much. Can you all hear me well?
Loud and clear.
Good. Thanks so much. So I'm only going to take a few minutes, so I'm going to go through this quickly. But this next piece is a bit of a pivot. So if we are thinking that collective impact is not an organization, what kind of infrastructure and what do we know about the governance and structure you need to support this level of collaboration? When you think about it, there are two key components. The first is, if you remember the 5 conditions of collective impact, what does the backbone need to look like? We know that it's a 10 to 15 person leadership table, and ultimately, knowing how critical that context expert voice is, how is the youth voice being brought into that work for you? Typically, these kinds of collective impact initiatives also can involve a fiscal sponsor who is the holder of the organization, of the resources for the collaborative, or a good chunk of them, and a core and dedicated staff team of 2 to 3 individuals. And then beyond that, you need to be thinking about this ecosystem that you are hoping to align and mobilize for change. And that includes all the different elements of people involved in delivering mentoring across Canada right now. What are the organizations? And then specifically, given the priorities that you choose, or those shifts that you want to really work together to make happen, what kind of action teams or working groups might you want to create who can champion key elements of those shifts? Okay, if we can go to the next slide. So the framework that I want to share with you all is a framework developed through the Centre for Social Innovation in Toronto, and it has actually been taken and adapted by many different organizations. So there's lots of templates you can look at to help kind of frame out how you translate this into your context. But really, if we're saying collective impact is not an organization, but rather a co-created innovation space, the key principles are, how do you keep enough structure to keep people moving forward, but not so much structure that you lose your agility and ability to be nimble. You don't want to create a new organization. You do need to create enough structure so people understand the parameters and how they have agreed to work together, but you really want to put the energy and time into actually focus on the work that you care about, and not the bureaucratic structures needed to enable it. Okay, go to the next slide, please. So there are 3 primary elements in this model. There is that leadership table that stewards the work overall. There are constellations, which are the working groups or action teams that are created to champion a key shift and develop the action plan around that. And then I'm hearing that there are some folks that are struggling to see the slides. I don't know if refreshing helps, but we will share them after as well. So the last part is you need that fiscal sponsor and the core staff really to help support how the work looks on the ground. And if we can go to the next slide, what I want to show you is sort of what that looks like graphically. So if you can see on the far left, you've got your leadership table and that core team of 2 to 3 staff people. One of the people at the leadership table should be that fiscal sponsor, that organization that's holding the resources on behalf of the whole organization. And together, those elements make up the core of that backbone infrastructure needed. And then you'll see the ecosystem of different people and organizations that exist out in the world who may or may not have some interaction with mentoring, But from them, you draw together action teams or working groups. These teams should be really built around ideas and opportunities, not about an existing organization. And they should, each of the action teams should reflect that diversity of sectors that you see on the leadership table. And there should probably, it works best if there are chairs or co-chairs of the action teams, and that those roles actually get cross-appointed to the leadership table. So if you remember the lessons from Vibrant Communities where they said you need the worm's eye view and the bird's eye view, the action teams or working groups are that worm's eye view. They have one element of this overall initiative that they're championing and they're going deep and figuring out. But when those folks on the action team who are cross-appointed to the leadership table meet as a leadership table, the focus of the leadership table is that bird's eye view. How do we align the work of the different action teams? What's coming up there? How do we make sure that we're advancing the effort overall? And how do we help inform the action teams so that they can align and coordinate their work also? If we can go to the next slide. So the backbone infrastructure, as we've said, includes those leaders of the effort overall, the fiscal host being one, and that core staff. Their role is to really look at the overarching purpose of your collective work and ensure that there's a vision and clear strategic priorities and directions that have been agreed on by the network of partners. They monitor the overall health and vitality of all elements of this network, and they make sure that the work of those different working groups is aligned and consistent with the overarching vision and values that have been set at the leadership level. Also, the beauty of thinking in terms of those constellations or working groups is that they can be time limited or they can be ongoing. So if there's an appetite and an opportunity, you form an action team or working group. When their work is done, they can be collapsed back and called on at another date if a new opportunity arises. You can go to the next slide. So what we know, this says a little bit more about the purpose of that leadership table and some of what we've seen in terms of the composition. So those are just good things to think about. And I'll go on to the next one, just to sort of say that there are some guidelines and experience from other sources that you can draw on in shaping what the structure looks like. Next slide. What you're looking for at the leadership level is members that are highly regarded by their peers, that are knowledgeable, they're action-oriented thinkers. They are able to not just speak as an individual, but have authority within a critical organization or sector and can bring that sector's contribution forward as well, and that they are eager and comfortable to sit in a space of unknowing and wondering and imagining what's possible together before they dive into work. And again, just a reiteration, given the focus of your work, having young people at the table, I think will be a critical element of what you want to be thinking about from a leadership perspective. On to the next, please. If we could go to the next one. Beautiful. So beyond sort of the range of possibilities, oops, I think we went one too far because it's kind of funny, but just want to highlight some of those characteristics. So across that leadership table as it starts to form, you know, do you have enough connectors, people who know lots of people across the system and can draw them in? Are there attractors, people that are innovative, exciting, and people want to be part of that work? That visionary element, blending subject matter and context expertise and real staff support to ensure that the ideas move forward meeting to meeting. Okay, next. So let's talk a bit more about equity, because at the end of the day, one of the critical roles that this backbone needs to be paying attention to is how do we ensure that we are reinforcing opportunities to build greater equity? How do we make sure that the strategies that we come up with are mindful of and considerate of those that are most vulnerable and potentially can benefit most from the work that we are doing? And how is that reflected throughout the work that we undertake together? On to the next slide. All right, so now I think that's kind of an overview of things to be thinking about in terms of building out your leadership. And I'm going to turn it over to you, Michael, I believe, to introduce a video about what does the beginning of this leadership structure look like within the context of the Canadian Mentoring Partnership.
The Canadian Mentoring Partnership is started by 3 organizations that came together and decided that we need to build a mentoring movement in Canada. Really hearing from other mentoring stakeholders what it is that we need to be doing and where we need to be focused our energies.
The Canadian Mentoring Partnership really came out of some conversations that we were having with Alberta Mentoring Partnership, with Big Brothers, Big Sisters of Canada. We gathered some people to have a summit to say, do we need a Canadian Mentoring Partnership? And it was a resounding, we need something nationally to really think about how do we strengthen mentoring and increase the number of youth who have mentors.
And so the whole idea of the Canadian Mentoring Partnership is up the capacity, get knowledge across to all mentoring organizations, and make sure that young Canadians have access to good people that can be there for them.
A pan-Canadian mentoring strategy will help organizations raise an abundance mindset of mentorship and call for community members to think about their role and the role that they want to play in the life of a young person, to be able to help guide and shape and support them on their journey.
One person alone can't ensure that all young people in the country have access to life-changing mentoring relationships. There's that saying that it takes a village to raise a child, and I believe this approach is really putting that saying into practice.
We know there's a lot of research out there about when kids are connected, when they have a developmentally healthy relationship in their life, they have higher senses of belonging, higher self-esteem, greater mental health, greater high school completion. So I want the higher protective factors and less risk factors in their life. So what does it mean to youth? It means that they have the ability to be all that they can be.
The impact of the Canadian Mentoring Partnership on the movement of mentorship in Canada is still to be identified. We are working very closely with our partners across the country, but not only our current partners, but to bring more people to the table.
We are building the movement. The idea was we didn't want to come in with the answers, and we didn't want to be prescribing how mentoring should look in Canada, because we are collaborating together to design, what is it we need to be looking at, and then creating the plan for the future.
We have a responsibility to make sure that young people have mentors in their lives. And in order to do that, we have to engage nationally, provincially, and locally, and find ways to get people interested in being a mentor and then help youth know where to find those mentors.
I think success for the Canadian Mentoring Partnership is really about engaging Canadians. And if we can collectively think about young people as a priority, and if we could think about our young people as they're going to be the people who shape this country, who lead this country forward, and that we can stand with them and beside them to help them become the leaders of tomorrow, then we'll have been successful in our mission of the Canadian Mentoring Partnership.
So thank you. Back to you, Sylvia. Actually,
I think it's
oh,
me
my
who's taking the
apologies.
mic.
Hi, Stacey.
Hi.
Are you unmuted? Great.
I unmuted. I was just waiting patiently to see what our tech was going to do. Our technician was going to do for us today. So thanks everybody for joining us. And the video always gives me a little bit of a chill, just because it's nice to see us say what we were thinking and have it animated and some music. So thank you. And Janet, I saw your comment that it was a good video. So thank you for that. Regarding this slide, so now that a Canadian Mentoring Partnership has some dedicated funding, and we have a bunch of people who are ready and willing to help build the movement, the question is, how are we actually going to do this, and how does this impact you? So the founding partners of CMP decided long ago they would not and could not build something and hope that people would engage. Instead, they agreed that a collective impact approach was the best way to grow the mentoring movement in Canada. Together with CMP, we commit to you, the folks on the phone, and those who are not with us today, but who have been joining us for our many webinars and working group sessions the last couple of weeks. We commit to building a common understanding of the problem and a shared vision for change, collecting data and measuring results while focusing on performance management and shared accountability, coordinating efforts through a joint plan of action, continuous and transparent communication, and ensuring that the CMP team convenes and coordinates participating organizations, allowing CMP to become the true backbone structure for the mentoring movement in Canada. Specifically with regards to the CMP structure, we are inspired by the table that you see on the screen, and we have aligned our structure accordingly. So the conveners for the CMP are the Alberta Mentoring Partnership, the Ontario Mentoring Coalition, and Big Brothers Big Sisters of Canada. Together, they have agreed to the following principles. They value shared voice and shared ownership of CMP. They are stronger together and benefit from being together. They value relationships first as both the outcome and the process. They will honor the needs of the steering committee and the leadership team to facilitate their participation in the CMP. And they have accountability to each other, and they value emergent design and experimentation with CMP. So key word in that sentence is experimentation. We'll try, we'll fail, or we'll succeed, and then we'll try different things moving forward. The next piece is the fiscal sponsor, who holds the fiduciary responsibilities for projects, including hosting and supervising staff. So currently the fiscal sponsor for the two projects is Big Brothers Big Sisters of Canada. And the backbone structure, as we've heard from Sylvia, provides leadership for staff and servant leadership to the collaborative tables. And in this case, CMP is holding that backbone role for the mentoring movement in Canada. And Sylvia, I giggled a little when you said there's about 2 to 3 staff. We are currently a staff of 7. So 2 to 3 might have been easier to manage, but we are ambitious, and through our funding agreements, we were able to hire a big team of 7 that allows us to really move more strategically and faster forward with the project. When we think of the leadership team that's over on the right-hand side of your screen, it is generally formed of multi-sector partners with a sphere of influence who commit their organizations. So their organizations, we have representatives from organizations to the change outcomes. Currently, our leadership table uses the name, founding partners. So when we refer sometimes to our founding partners, that is Alberta Mentoring Partnership, Big Brothers Big Sisters, and Ontario Mentoring Coalition, each of whom have 2 people who are assigned to the founding partners team, which is the beginning of a leadership table. We are looking to expand the leadership table in the coming, or expand the founding partners to become the leadership table in the coming months. And so today's call is the first time that we have to speak with you about some of the key strategy elements that committee will work on. So relationships with and engagement of partners is a priority, strategic planning, so goals and the intersections and how things relate to each other, strategic communications between partners, with governments, internationally as well. We're developing an international movement around mentoring, and identifying indicators of success. And the founding partners commit to being actively engaged and contribute to the overall success of CMP.
Currently, the steering committee, also known sometimes as an executive committee, is a subset of the leadership table. Currently, we have 3 tri-chairs, so Beth Malcolm from Ontario Mentoring Coalition, Liz O'Neill from Alberta Mentoring Partnership, and Matthew Chater from Big Brothers Big Sisters of Canada. The 3 of them work with me and on setting the agenda and facilitating the founding partners meetings, participate in the selection of CMP staff, and are my supervisors, and ensure the CMP leadership team identifies issues and opportunities for growth and development. The last piece of the puzzle is something that Tracy will talk about in just a minute, but it really is the working groups and communities of practice that form the bigger part of the constellation slide that you saw a moment ago. And they're composed of members of the leadership team and external community members who will drive subsets of the collective effort. Can we go to the next slide? So if we look at the CMP initiative, CMP has committed to expanding access to mentoring for youth in Canada by building sector capacity to empower every young person to fulfill their potential. It is important to recognize that CMP initiative is where we want to engage all of you. You form the top layer, the umbrella of this slide. Although we are very fortunate to have funding from Bank of Montreal and ESDC, CMP is developing a sustainability plan that will allow for us to continue building the movement beyond the end of the life of the projects, which is in 2022. As we build the sustainability plan, we are keeping 2 key pieces in mind. CMP cannot become a competitor to mentoring service delivery organizations. We cannot take funds away from communities. We also need to ensure we develop pipelines of support for grassroots mentoring coalitions who are struggling to get off the ground due to lack of human and financial resources. We recognize the hard work that is happening on the ground every day and want to be a value added, and we do not want to become just another newsletter that you sign up to. So those are our aspirational goals for Canadian Mentoring Partnership, and I'll ask Tracy now to start talking a little bit more about the working groups and communities of practice.
Thanks, Michael. And thanks, Stacey. Can we, with our working groups and communities of practice, it's critical for us to engage stakeholders and to engage the experts on the ground who actually are doing the work and who are in tune with the needs of communities and the diversity across the sector. And so the purpose of working groups and action groups are for us to really build out our collective work. This is the core and the meat of all of the research that we will be doing and building out our networks. So this is where the work is happening. And for some of you on the call today, your organizations or your programs, or some of you individually, are currently participating in a working group with us to determine an e-mentoring platform. And those working groups that we have been engaging with over the last 3.5 weeks have been very instrumental in shaping the work moving forward, shaping the landscape of what is needed for service providers to enhance quality mentoring, especially during this time of COVID and physical distancing. So the purpose really is to build together collective action and meaningful tools and resources to create system change, but also increase the capacity of programs and organizations across this country. And so over the course of the next several months, we will be developing more working groups and more action teams, more communities of practice, because as you all know, the expertise is on the ground, and we want to ensure that this work moving forward has meaning for you, and that, as Stacey indicated, that we are not just another newsletter, that we are actively building resources, tools, and strategies to promote system change alongside with you, and that has meaning that will carry on into the future. Next slide, Michael. So this approach around partnering for collective impact, as a strategy, we want to build out a leadership team, as Stacey spoke about, and to ensure that that helps to drive our work moving forward, creating tangible work, but also vision for mentoring in Canada. We know that there will be occasional users and partners that will come in and will work with us in working groups and help to influence some of the tools and resources and materials that we create, that we will also have ambassadors, as we spoke about and that we heard, that we need mentoring champions in this country, and ambassadors that will promote our work, make links for us, and to move the needle and the dial on mentoring in Canada. We will have peripheral users that will come to our website, join in once in a while, and take the resources that we are offering and use them at the local level to influence either program development or conversations with political leaders around the importance of mentoring. Then we will also have champions that will help to spearhead and to drive the work and be the voice of mentoring in Canada alongside with us. So this is how we're seeing our work and partnering together, not only in building out local networks, building out CMP as a national initiative, but how it relates. And it really is fluid. It allows individuals and programs and stakeholders to engage in a fluid way, to sometimes be an occasional user, maybe to be a champion, but to move that depending on capacity, depending on the realm that your organization or your program sees a need. Next slide, Michael. Thank you. So we have another polling question that we would like to engage you in right now to ensure that CMP is moving forward both strategically, but also in a meaningful way. So as Stacy spoke about, as we look to build out our leadership table, in building a national mentoring movement in Canada, we'd like your input on key perspectives from groups that should be engaged at the CMP table. And I don't know, Michael, if we can scroll over or if people, when they're in Mentimeter, can see the below groups, but I will also read those off to you. So we're wanting to look at private sector and business groups, government and public sector, citizens and those that are living the experience, from the groups from the voluntary sector, the charitable sector, the not-for-profit sector, and youth groups as well. The voice of youth will be pivotal for us to have at the leadership table as well. So we would like you to share key perspectives and those that you feel are necessary and critical for us that should be engaged in order for us to build out our leadership table.
Yeah, I believe, Tracy, when they look at their phone or at menti.com and they use the code,
great.
They have a chance to input there. So it doesn't come up on my
fabulous.
slide, just the results.
Perfect. Yeah, and that's what I thought. It only allows you in Mentimeter to frame your question with so many characters. So we had some add-ons, so I'm hoping that people can see that on their device. Indigenous, yep. Immigrant services and societies, organizations.
Yeah, LGBTQ community, cultural organizations and groups, absolutely. Urban Indigenous organizations, Black communities. So once again, maybe we'll just give it a few, give it 30 seconds, and if anybody wants to add other pieces. Representatives that have had the opportunity to network with a balanced approach to doing frontline work. It might have got cut off there, but absolutely wanting that frontline perspective is there. High priority neighborhoods, Ministry of Child and Youth Services. national and provincial volunteer associations, local parks and recreation. Yeah, great stuff.
Excellent. Thank you so much. It's important for us to build out a leadership table that that is well-rounded, that includes all perspectives to move the CMP strategy forward, and that to ensure that we're not missing somebody that's critical at the table. Stacey, anything else that you want to add?
No, I think it summarizes well where we're going. I don't know when the leadership table exactly will be set up. I think the founding partners want to learn a lot from today's session from you in order to identify, you know, what are the perspectives that are missing, and then maybe put out an invitation or tap some people on the shoulders. So part of our next steps will really be, you know, crafting a model of what a leadership table will look like, who should be there, and then looking to recruit folks to join that. And of course, develop terms of reference, because right now we don't know what terms of reference for a leadership table would be. We have an idea, most meet quarterly, annually, you know, those types of things, but all those details. So it would be great if you had questions or comments around that even to help us shape what the leadership table would look like.
Again, if there are any other questions or comments or insights that you would like to share, we encourage you to add those into the chat. And I think we can move on to the next slide.
So this is one more Mentimeter question. And I'll just pull it up here. So thinking about today in one word or phrase, if you would like to enter that into the Mentimeter, we're going to do a word cloud and try and summarize the day in one word. Yeah, I also note Lori had mentioned universities, colleges, etc. would be great partners. And thank you for that, Lori. For those folks who are interested, we had on our previous mentoring webinar on research, we had Dr. Christina Rinaldi from the Canadian Center on Mentoring Research come and share with us about how they're building alliances across Canada and how they're reaching out to other academics and post-secondary. So if you're aware of others who are in this field or interested in getting into this field, or you have connections with, absolutely please go to mentoringcanada.ca and connect with Veronique Church-Dupuis, who's on our team, and she will help connect you. So today in one word: hope, visionary, affirming, informative, change, collective ownership, optimism, open access, collective ownership, impact. Absolutely. So add a few more words. Any other summaries today? I'm glad nobody said overwhelming. I'm glad nobody said impossible. Seeing togetherness, hopeful, vision, all of that is wonderful. So I'll just start the countdown again, but powerful. Yeah, energizing. Common understanding, collective ownership, open access. I like that. Yeah. All right. So there's our summary of the day: journey, achievable, open access, aspirational, powerful, energizing, creative, insightful, affirming, informative. Lots for informative. So yeah, the more frequently the words are entered, the larger they are. So that's an exciting summary. So just jumping back here today, we're going to get more into the Q&A, so please do enter your questions into the Q&A or the chat box. We want to continue the conversation. But while you're ruminating on your questions, I just want to remind you that CMP needs your help. We have 2 surveys in the field right now under the broad heading of our State of Mentoring Research Project. The first is about it's the National Youth Mentoring Survey. We're surveying 18 to 30-year-olds about their experiences with mentoring, thinking back about the difference that a mentor made in their life, thinking about when they may have needed a mentor or if they had access to a mentor, how the mentor impacted their future educational or career opportunities. It's a great study we're doing with SRDC Canada. You can win $1,000 by participating, so please do help us. You can circulate that link below, mentoringcanada.ca/state of mentoring, that has a link both to the National Youth Mentoring Survey and our second survey, the Survey of Youth Development and Mentoring Organizations. This one is absolutely targeted to probably more of you on the call, thinking about the needs of mentoring organizations across Canada, thinking about our challenges, our opportunities, our areas to maximize our impact, and how can we work together. So this survey has also been released. You can also win $1,000 for your organization by participating. So please do visit mentoringcanada.ca/state of mentoring. I would encourage you to share this with staff members, with colleagues, with funders, with other organizations. Both of these surveys are fantastic, and we'll be sharing all of the information with you. So it's a great opportunity for you to get insights and assistance in how you can help do your work. So once again, mentoringcanada.ca/state of mentoring. And again, a reminder, our next webinar is May 20th, 1 p.m., growing the number of mentors in Canada. This is going to be more about recruitment, retention, marketing, communications. How do we reach the general public and encourage them to participate in mentoring? How do we raise the profile of mentoring across Canada? What are successful examples where this has already been done? How we've applied a collective impact approach to marketing and communication and raising the number of mentors that are recruited and engaged in mentoring programs across Canada. So it's going to be a great conversation, and I encourage you to sign up once again, mentoringcanada.ca/events, and please register and bring questions. So before we wrap up today, I think we'll go to the Q&A, and I'll just take a look. Yeah, and Veronique put in the chat more information about the surveys, and please do share them in your networks. Well, as Stacy said, we are more than a newsletter, but once again, I would encourage you to sign up for our newsletter at the bottom of mentoringcanada.ca. Please do type in your name and email. This will allow you to make sure that you get the first crack at any of these new resources, materials, information, anything we're sharing, key points from our working groups and the different work that we're doing. So please do check that out. At this time, I just want to, Michelle Ma asked, what are other ways to reconcile with the First Nations people? Michelle, that's a great question. And I think that's one of the pieces that we're going to be having ongoing discussions about. I know there's some fantastic mentoring programs in the Indigenous community for the Indigenous community. And I think we're going to be looking to showcase some of those best practices across Canada. As well for other organizations that are non-Indigenous working with Indigenous young people. What are some of the best practices that we should think about and help promote across Canada? We really believe in the rising tide lifts all ships approach. And if there's a program that you're aware of, Michelle, that's doing a great job of this, and we want to try and share it and scale it up and scale it out across Canada, this is absolutely something we want to look at. Similarly, the second question about what are the ways to share the surveys for immigrants and refugees with lack of connections and technologies? That is actually something that our survey group is looking at. So Michelle, I would encourage you to reach out to Veronique at her email in the chat, and she can connect with you on that. It's something that we have been looking at too. So before we go maybe deeper into questions, I'll just go back to our panelists and see if there was anything that they wanted to respond to or wrap up or share. Sylvia?
I've absolutely loved seeing how people have been thinking about taking a theoretical framework and making it your own in terms of ideas, concepts, key shifts. It makes me excited to see where all of this is headed.
Awesome. And was there anything in the Mentimeter responses that surprised you?
Not surprised me, but I do think, you know, you've got some really great bones here for building this, and seeing the level of engagement from folks on the call is the other piece for me, because I think the more this is owned across your network, the more robust it will become, and I think it bodes very well for the future. Our youth are fortunate.
Yeah. Stacy, did you want to share anything?
I echo very much what Sylvia just said. I think the plan has always been to take the theory of collective impact and then build our projects and our movement around the theory and adapt it based on the realities. And so the comments that we received today are it's not a lot of new stuff. It's a lot of stuff we've heard by the founding partners, because they also represent a variety of stakeholders across Canada. I think collectively between Ontario Mentoring Partnership, Big Brothers Big Sisters of Canada, and Alberta Mentoring Partnership, I think I said that twice, Ontario Mentoring Coalition, they represent over 350 organizations. They've been able to, to help inform the common agenda as we move forward. And today it was reflected and it was echoed. Some new things came in different ways. The multi-level government, for the CMP movement, we've always said, let's focus on federal and we'll support local so that they can connect. That might have been a little bit of a different angle, but generally speaking, I'm very happy to see that we're on track and we're building the movement in the way that reflects the needs and the wants of folks in the field.
And Tracy?
I just want to comment on the final word cloud. Powerful is my first response to the words that have been put forward, and that entire word cloud, I think, is the vision and the area of focus for CMP that we need to keep at the forefront of our work. And I know that we will take these words and review them and reflect back on them often, because that really is what we are hoping to achieve as our work moves forward. And so thank you. Thank you for your insight. Thank you for your expertise today. And we look forward to the journey together.
There were a couple questions that popped up in the chat. Lori asked about outreach to Aboriginal agencies or settlement agencies to get the surveys out, and maybe they can help get them out to their communities. Absolutely, Lori, that's something we've been doing. We've had a sheet of partners that we've been working through in different provinces and the territories. Definitely that's an outreach. We've been doing some targeted social media as well. Yeah, SRDC has been fantastic on that. So if you think we might have missed somebody, please do let us know and we'll absolutely get them the survey. So Sylvia, maybe I had a question here. So when we look at this image on I'm just going to pull up the PowerPoint again. Am I right to understand then that in this image about the CMP, that if you're on this call today, if you are now a part of the CMP, you're now a part of this journey and you are represented somewhere here in this image?
Absolutely. And I would say, depending on who you are and the expertise you have, at different points in time, you could be holding all kinds of roles. Everyone here has the potential to be an ambassador and champion of this work. And then, really, I think for me, the question that I would encourage people to take away and ruminate on for themselves is, in what ways might I contribute? Do I want to contribute to this work? And it may be sometimes I am the ambassador and I link people in. Sometimes it may be I want to be part of a focused working group because my expertise in this area is really important to bring forward and help shape what this looks like, you know, across the country, that kind of thing. So think about it for yourself. Do an internal reflection. Where can you contribute? What can you contribute and in what ways? And really feel that this is yours to help shape and breathe life into. So thank you.
On that note, maybe seeing no more. Oh, will the slides be shared with the participants? Thank you, Michelle. Yes, we'll be reviewing that. We are working on translating our material and it will be shared on the site. The best way to get the slides is to sign up for our newsletter, and when they're available, they'll be shared there. Once again, mentoringcanada.ca. So thank you, everyone. Thank you for all of your engagement today. Thank you for helping us test the Mentimeter software. Thank you, Sylvia, for joining us and sharing. Thank you to Tracy and Stacy for your wisdom as well. We'll stop the presentation here, but of course the conversation continues. You can go to mentoringcanada.ca. You can click on team, get the team members, get our contact, and please do be in touch. So I hope to see all of you back on the 20th to talk about how we're going to grow the number of mentors in Canada. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day.
Thanks, Michael.